I'm Michael Burgess from VR Fish, and alongside me is Alicia Gustafsson. And in this video, we're going to be showing you how to fish our shores and jetties, and particularly what happens when we do catch a shark or a ray.
Shark Mates. Catch, care, conserve.
When people come down to piers and jetties like this, they're expecting to get fish, snapper, whiting, flathead. But of course, our sharks and our rays do live out there and they can be caught. So as an angler, we need to make sure that we're well prepared when we're fishing, so that if we do catch a ray or a shark, we know what to do.
And look, in your experience, is there any ways that we can change the way we fish to actually avoid catching sharks and rays?
Yeah, there is. Sharks and rays generally will be scanning the bottom. So if you're using a sinker rig, that's presenting the bait at the bottom where the sharks and rays are congregating. So when you're fishing off a pier or jetty, it is best to use the paternoster rig. And in terms of your bait, chop it up into small chunks maybe so that it's not so large. That'll attract the fish that you're targeting. You want to make sure that your gear's checked, your line is strong. You want to be using heavy gear just in case you get onto a shark or a ray.
It's also important when we are fishing that we are actively fishing and not just leaving our rod off to the side.
Yeah, that's right. Look, when you're fishing, it's tempting to walk away from the rod or move around and, have a chat. But it is important to stay actively supervising the rod.
If we've sort of hooked up on a larger ray or a shark, it may run up and down the jetties.
So again, it touches on having a plan when you come down to a pier or jetty in the unlikely event that you could catch a shark or a ray. And so if you do think you've got one on, before you're bringing it up into the net, communicate with those around you, encourage other anglers to bring in their line. If it's a fairly small shark or ray, you're more than welcome to bring it up onto the jetty where you are with a net. But if it's a little bit larger and you feel like you can't get it up and you don't want to cut the line, and you're close enough to the shore, you can actually walk it down to the beach where you can then safely remove the hook and do what you need to do.
A lot of people that might be fishing piers and jetties, they might not have a great idea of identification.
If you're not so good with your ID, it is really important to just assume that the species could be dangerous. And the reason we say that is because some species of rays, they do have barbs on their tails. So it's really important if you pull up a ray or shark to make sure that those around you, they will be curious, but to protect those around you and make sure that they keep a clear distance.
So if we've caught a fish on a pier or jetty, I guess could be a lot of people wanting to get their hooks back.
There's really no shame in cutting the line because you're likely to do less damage in the process. So just make sure that you've got a pair of scissors or pliers to cut it as close as you can to the fish's mouth. And that'll eventually break down and that fish will be fine. That's actually a really responsible thing to do.
And one of the things to remember, especially if you're fishing from land base, is not to bring the shark over the rocks. Look for a nice safe place to land the fish and then move the fish to you.
So if we do need to take the shark or ray out of the water, what's the maximum amount of time that you think it should stay out of the water for?
Yeah, so we always encourage anglers that are fishing to sort of follow the rule of thumb 2-minute rule. So no longer than 2 minutes out of the water. Of course, often anglers will want to take a photo of their catch and that can extend the period of the fish being out of the water, which is why it's really important to be prepared. So make sure if you're with a group of friends, there's someone there ready with the camera so that they can get that photo and you can get that fish back into the water within the 2 minutes.
So when we're out fishing, it's really important to know all the fishing rules, but there's specific rules relating to fishing for rays around piers and jetties in Victoria.
That's right. So yeah, there are generally specific rules for every state in Australia. In Victoria, so you're required to release any rays that you catch within 400 metres of a pier or a jetty.
And when I'm out off fishing here, I'm probably after a snapper or a flathead. So to try to avoid lots of rays congregating around jetties, it's probably a great idea not to throw all your leftover bait and offal and burley into the water.
Exactly. It's really tempting to even burley up the area and attract the sharks and rays in, but it's best practice not to do that, especially at the end of your fish when you've got all of the leftovers. Take it home or throw it in the rubbish bin nearby.
Alicia, thanks so much for your advice today.
No worries.
And if you're going to head out fishing to one of the piers, jetties or shore, it's very important that you know all the fishing rules and regulations before you go. If you're not too sure about the identification of your sharks and rays, leave the shark and the ray in the water for release. There's no shame in cutting the line as short as possible. If you would like to know more about the best practices and techniques when you're out fishing for sharks and rays, either targeting them or unexpectedly catching them like on shores and on piers, check out the Shark Mates YouTube channel and website.